the worlds of permaculture and regenerative design and the practical and spiritual things we can do to literally heal the earth, to take a piece of damaged ground and bring it back to life and health, and the worlds of activism and advocacy, and the people who are standing up and taking action to prevent the further destruction and to try to get support for some of what we need to make that all happen. So we formed Earth Activist Training. Charles and I have been teaching together for at least a decade now, probably longer, since he was just a young thing. And we really feel that the whole regenerative movement needs to embody the principle that diversity creates resilience. That's true in an ecosystem. I also believe it's true in human systems and social systems. And so we've begun giving scholarships over 10 years ago to Indigenous folks, to people of color, to people who are on the front lines of environmental and social activism. And I believe it's made tremendous difference in the permaculture movement. It's enabled us to share some of these tools with some very important communities, to mentor some amazing people, and to actually have an impact really all over the world. And a lot of that is due to the support that we have gotten from many of you and the generous donations that people have made so that we can actually afford to do that and provide scholarships and mentorships and support for our students. So I'm very grateful to all of you who have donated, and grateful in advance for the wonderful generosity that I know you're going to show this project. And you're going to get to meet some of those folks tonight as we create ritual together. So let us begin.
Maybe we'll have a song to start us off and let people get on and get settled, and then get started.
Yeah.
Okay. So sit back, relax, settle in, and we'll get started as soon as the song's over.
Thank you, Charles. It's such a beautiful song. I love that group, Spell Song. And again, welcome to everyone. We are going to be celebrating the summer solstice, the longest day, shortest night of the year here in the Northern Hemisphere. It's possible some of you are in the Southern Hemisphere, where it's the winter solstice, and if so, it's still a very important turning of the wheel, and I just hope we don't confuse you too much. This is a benefit, as you know, for our Earth Activist Training Diversity Scholarships, where we try to bring some of the tools of regenerative design and permaculture to people who are on the front lines of environmental and social activist struggles. And you're going to get to meet some of them. But we're going to begin right now with a land acknowledgement, and then we're going to create sacred space. We're going to cast a circle, call in the elements, and I'm going to teach some grounding and maybe teach us some grounding tools in the process of doing that.
So for our land acknowledgement tonight, Christy Broadhead is going to speak to us. They were not able to be here in person, so they recorded a piece for us. So I'll get set up here and we'll have our land acknowledgement from Christy Broadhead.
Happy birthday, Starhawk. Merry solstice to you all. Cancer season, summer ween among us. Some of you may already know me. I'm Christy Broadhead. I am matrilineally Nobe Guna, Kokle, Quechua, Aymara, and patrilineally Clan Sinclair and Cherokee Nation. I am based on Moku Okiawe, also called Hawaii Island of Kanaka-Uivi. Even though I live here as an invited guest, I am constantly aware of my surroundings and space by acknowledging my direct need to decolonize my presence on Indigenous land and be a better ally to Indigenous peoples. I acknowledge that I am taking that much needed humanitarian step to be a better person on Indigenous land and to Indigenous peoples. And I acknowledge my life is subsidized entirely by their unmitigated loss of land, life, and freedom. And I will continue to find ways of ensuring they have all these and more. I will ensure they have liberation on their own land, and that is the path to a better future. Our collective acknowledgement goes as far as admitting we require too much sacred resources to maintain our colonial privilege and destructive lifestyle. Our colonial lifestyle has been attained because of mass genocide and ongoing ethnic cleansing that then leads to our enjoyment of privilege due to oppression of Indigenous peoples through state-sanctioned violence. We also acknowledge we take up too much space and control too much of the narrative through white supremacist educational institutions and lifeways. Thereby completes the land acknowledgement of wherever we are in the world that we occupy for most of us. And to find out the name of the land you are on, you go to native-land.ca/. A portion of this land acknowledgement was written and inspired by @_native_hummingbird on IG. How does it make you feel, and why might those feelings be coming up? If we were to accept our complicity in continued erasure of Indigenous peoples, how would we live differently? 250 years ago, there was no concept of homelessness and hunger. What is your experience of struggle and survival on stolen land? What ideas and visions do you have for living on Indigenous land with respect and reciprocity? Most nations still exist present day. There are cultural centers you can visit, elders that are around that you can be in frequent communication with, that offer a way to bridge the gap in relationships with the earth, plants, people, ways for the future that always require being involved in politics to improve the course that most aligns with the voices of the Indigenous peoples in your community. I invite you to think about how we can go beyond land acknowledgements in our day-to-day lives. One way could be to pay a land tax to the Indigenous people whose land you occupy. There is a way to do this, easy to find with a quick search. Feel free to drop other land tax or ideas for going beyond land acknowledgements in the chat or make comments about it. From Turtle Island to Palestine, Indigenous people deserve life, land, and freedom. Thank you, Earth Activist Training and folks that donate toward diversity scholarships. It's hugely impacted our small island community toward food sovereignty and sustainability.
Thank you, Christy. So let us ground ourselves. Let us make a connection to the earth. Take a moment, settle yourself. Might want to wiggle your butt, get yourself comfy. Get your feet flat on the floor, on the ground. You might be sitting or standing. And take some deep breaths. Let those breaths go all the way down into your belly. And you know, this is a really tense time. At least I'm experiencing it that way. Here in the United States, our next and very crucial election is in November, but we're already constantly gearing up for it. And The stakes are enormously high. We here in California are already seeing wildfire season beginning right now in June. The East Coast is having a major heat wave. The impact of climate change is more and more evident. And the levels of lies and disinformation and corruption and all that stuff, and just general meanness and bullying from some of the top people in our political world is just staggering and disheartening. So maybe take a breath and let's just release some of that. And as we ground, I want to share a few tools I use for staying centered, staying sane in the midst of all that, because it's very easy when terrible stuff is happening in the world to feel like we have to internalize it. And we don't want to shut down from it. You know, I think it is a good thing that we know people are being bombed and killed in Gaza and children are starving, and we feel bad about that. That speaks well of our humanity, and it is the ground of beginning to do something about that. And that we know the hostages are still suffering in the tunnels there, and we feel bad about that. But that doesn't mean we have to internalize all the misery of the world, because when we do that, we become actually less effective at taking action around it. So let's just for a moment imagine yourself like a tree with roots that go down into the earth, down from the base of your spine, down from your belly, down from your legs and feet. And take a deep breath and just let some of that go down through those roots. And feel how the earth composts. You know, takes our garbage and stuff and turns it into living, fertile soil. That's sort of the essence of regeneration, is that we get fertility out of decay. And right now, as we experience the decay of so many of the systems and values and things around us, let's just take a breath and imagine them sinking into the earth and composting, being taken apart by the million hungry mouths of the earth, bacteria, the fungi, microorganisms, the beetles, the worms, taken down to turn into living soil, to turn into humus. Feel those roots push down deeper and deeper, down through layers of subsoil and gravel, down through the waters held in the earth, all the way down to that core of fire at the very center of the earth. And take a breath, and anything you want to release and let go of, just let it go down through those roots into the fire. You know, at a solstice, at these turning points of the wheel of the year, it's often a time we think back on what's happened. I'm sure many of us have lost loved ones in this past year. Maybe some of you have had dreams or hopes that didn't come to fruition, or seen disappointments. Maybe there's even moments of failure. You just take a breath and just let that all go. And again, you know, when you love someone, it's not that you want to let go of the grief. The grief is a gift, it's a measure of our love. But you can also allow it to transform. So that it opens up for you deeper levels of connection and compassion, deeper levels of your own creativity. And one more time, take a breath and just let all that stuff go. And when you really need to cleanse, okay, here is a little tool I like to use. We call it chop, comb, and fluff. You just chop up some of your energy field. Chop, 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 right? And then comb it out and just flick that stuff onto the ground. It's a good thing to do, like if you have an interaction with somebody that leaves you feeling like slimed, or you watch the news too much, right? And we just comb it all out, and then fluff the aura up. What we're going for here is something like the kind of backcombing of Jackie Kennedy bouffant hairdo. Just getting that all out, nice, fluffed up. And that's another very simple tool that you can use when you need to release some of the negative stuff that comes at us. And then let's take a breath and feel those roots, and take a breath and draw some of that fire up through those roots. Up through all those layers of bedrock and gravel, through those waters under the earth, up through the soil, up into the base of your spine and your belly. And now feel your spine grow. Let it grow like a tree trunk. Draw that energy up and up and up. You can kind of imagine a string pulling you up from the back of your head on up, and feel the energy come up and out the top of your head like a fountain. Leaves and branches that sweep up to the sky, come back down, touch the earth, and surround you. You're kind of surrounded by this sphere that's like a natural filter. And you can take a breath and feel the sky energy around you. Where I am, it's still sunlight. Where you are, it might already be moonlight. We're in a full moon as well as a solstice. But take a breath and draw that energy in. Take it in. Feel how leaves feed on sunlight. They use that energy. They take air and water and transform them into food. And just take a moment and draw in what you need. If there's some part of you that's feeling worn down or exhausted, overwhelmed, just take a breath and draw that energy in. Draw it down through the top of your head, down through your heart. Take a moment and just bathe your heart. Down to your arms and hands, down to your belly, down through your legs and feet into the earth. And just feel that flow of energy coming up and through you and down and through you. And now, take a moment, notice if there's any holes or breaks in that nice sphere of leaves and branches. Any place where something or someone has really gotten through your boundaries. And take a moment and just grow them out. You can create a filter that can filter out negative stuff and protect you. And you might notice also if there's some place, where maybe you've been hurt over and over again and you've developed like a knob. You're so well protected, nothing can get through. if you cut a tree in the same place over and over again, it develops like this giant bump. And take a breath and just imagine opening that out, softening that up, spreading that out. So again, good stuff can come in, negative stuff can get filtered out or transformed just into pure living energy. And that's another tool along with our grounding every day. We can take a moment, we can set our boundaries. You can check and see if there's any cords, any energetic cords hooking you to somebody. If you're the parent of a small child, that's appropriate to have a cord. But for anyone else, you don't really want to be corded into them. Even a lover, even someone you're madly fond of, better to have the energy flowing freely between you. Just take that little cord and just pop it out and send it back with love. And I think in this world, our politicians, our celebrities, all those people send cords out all the time. Like, the world is like a tangled web of those threads of people. And again, just pop them out. Your energy can just be your own. And then put a little ring of light around it. And blessed be. Charles, you want to create our circle?
Yeah, let's create our circle, but let's do this together. I invite you all to take part in this circle creation. So as Starhead, you drop some energy for this. Reach down again and just drop a little bit of energy from the earth. Draw some of that up. Mix it in with a little piece of the energy of you. Let me see. And let's draw that out. I'm going to throw that up into the sky. And somewhere up there, it's going to bump into another thread from somebody in this group. And just feel it connect. And feel another connection coming in from somebody else. And let's start to weave a web. See the web that goes across from where you are, spreading out, encompassing the globe, reaching down and around to hold us all together. And take one more deep breath in and push some energy out into those cords to energize that web, that network that holds us together, that wraps us in and connects us. To our circle, I say welcome. To each of you, I say welcome. Tonight, welcome. I think Celeste is going to call in east for us.
Hello, I'm Celeste, connecting from Lakota, Dakota, Anishinaabe, and Ho-Chunk land. Do you want me to talk about projects a little bit first or after?
Yeah, go ahead and tell us about what you're doing, and then we'll call Erin.
One of the projects that's lighting me up so much right now is a permaculture landscaping project that I'm a part of called Pulse Botanicals. Maybe the friend who started it is also on the call, Eve Marie. She's the person that told me about the Earth Activist PDC, and this was also part of her project, was creating a boulevard of permaculture landscaping. And yeah, it's really beautiful. We just ate a cherry pie from cherries that were picked there. There's lots of Solomon seal and lots of medicine growing through the cracks, and edible foods and intentionally planted medicine as well. And an aspect that I love about it as well is the social permaculture of community. Lots of folks coming with their kids or their moms, sometimes multi-generations, and we've been taking time to bow to the plants and to sing songs to them, which also has created community by bringing folks over to share and plant with us and learn about medicine, and a lot of beautiful conspiring in the garden and being connected through mycelial networks to communities working towards change. And with that, I will also call in air, the direction of the east, of the winds of change, of thought and conspiration, of right speech, palabra, song, prayers, social permaculture. Welcome, air.
Welcome, air.
Yeah.
Thank you, Celeste. And I'd like to call in fire. I'm going to share my screen a little bit and show you some of the work my community does out here around fire. We live in a fire ecology, and our land has burned in 1978. There was a major fire here. We are always aware of the danger of fire, and especially with climate change and fires growing more intense. So we've begun doing prescribed burns. We do lots of thinning and pruning. The indigenous people here are the Kashayapomo, who managed this land with fire for tens of thousands of years. So we try to learn from their example and learn from the many people who have worked and developed the tools and the techniques and the expertise for bringing good fire back to the land. And for the last 2 or 3 years, just about every weekend through the winter, when you can work in the woods safely here, we've done limbing up and thinning and pruning. To me, that's part of honoring the sacredness of fire and the understanding that fire is both our friend, fire of the hearth, and fire is also our great teacher about awareness, about care, about coming together in community. No one can fight a fire alone. No one can prepare for fire alone. So I want to invoke and honor fire. We have a song that we sing in our fire ritual that goes, "Sacred fire that shapes this land, summer teacher, winter friend, protect us as we learn anew, to work, to heal, to live with you." Welcome, fire. Thank you, fire.
Welcome, fire. So for water, we have invocation by Sherry Morin. And she's not able to be here, unfortunately, but she sent something in. So we have a piece from Sherry to welcome in water and talk about work she's been doing. I say, need to share this with sound so you can hear it.
In this time of summer solstice, where we celebrate nature, balance, and renewal, and honor the vitality and life-giving energy of the sun, we're filled with gratitude. We bring into the circle all those Afghan refugees who continue to be brought to new lives through the generosity and life-giving energy of so many of you. Many are permaculturalists and have made commitments to ground their lives in nonviolence in the spirit of Mother Earth. Many are now safely in Portugal, Germany, Canada, the UK, Australia, Netherlands, United States, and other places of welcome, and are actually expanding their life in the new countries. Many more wait in Pakistan in safe houses, and still others live in fear in Afghanistan. As we celebrate solstice, the time for reaffirming compassion, kindness, and warmth, our Afghan friends send profound gratitude to all those who are continuing to offer them new hope through their ongoing support of EAT's Afghan Refugee Project. Tashakur, deep gratitude from all of us. We call to the energy of the West, to the healing waters and source of all life, to the waters of her living womb that bring forward new life into this planet, to the rains, the mists, and the river songs that wash over us, cleanse us of unwanted energy, and restore us and all living beings, to the oceans and rivers and seas, as well as salmon, otter, and all the creatures who dwell there. We also welcome the water that transforms lives of those who are in crisis by carrying them to safety and transporting life-saving goods to those who cannot leave their places of danger. May you heal their souls, nourish their bodies, and awaken their spirits. We welcome the ancestors and our beloved who dwell in the West. We seek their wisdom and invite them to watch with special care over all those who live or are moving to new lives on the sacred waters. Welcome, waters. Welcome, spirits of the West.
Welcome.
Thank you, Sherry. And for those who are on this call who supported that Afghan work, I say special thanks to you all, and thanks to Sherry for all the hard work she's done. And I think we have Lexington is going to be speaking next, speaking for the Earth.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Lexar Lexington. My pronouns are they, them, there. I'm calling from what is now called Southwest Michigan, but is actually stolen Potawatomi, Ojibwe, and Odawa land that I am a settler on until land back. And then I hope to be a good guest. I will be calling in Earth in the North today, and I'd like to share a little bit about a project that feels very connected to the Earth for me. Since the summer of uprisings in 2020, I have been working towards Black liberation. And one of the projects that came out of a deep need over the summer of uprisings was to support Black organizers through a meal train to feed the people who were on the ground and doing the work and putting their bodies on the line. From that meal train, some of our families shared their resources through mutual aid with other families in the community, and it grew larger to not just become Black organizers, but BIPOC community at large. And so from that meal train, mutual aid train, a few of our families had children, and they asked us if we had access to diapers because, and also formula, because there was the formula shortage at that time. And so we created a mutual aid train to supply free diapers and wipes to our families. And then some of the folks who had given birth began to bleed again, and they asked us if we had access to menstrual supplies. And so we created a mutual aid train to provide free menstrual supplies to BIPOC folks who bleed. And so although our meal train has sunset at this point, we are still running our diaper and free diapers and wipes train and free menstrual supplies train. And I've had the pleasure of having families on the train who they got on the train right after they gave birth, and now their children are potty trained. Some of our families are still struggling with potty training because it's hard. I myself have helped potty train a child, and it was a doozy. Um, Getting to drop off diapers, wipes, menstrual supplies to families, getting that face to face, and thanking people, honestly, for being willing to say, I need help. Um, there is a quote that I often say, and I don't know who said it. So if anybody knows, please let me know. But I heard this quote that said, we do not have a resource problem. We have a distribution problem. And in that way, that's what mutual aid means to me, is there are resources out there, and there are some very clever and on purpose mechanisms to keep those resources from everyone. And so I think of mutual aid as mycelial, as a mycelial network in that way, because much like how mycelium moves abundance to where there is need, or from where there is excess to where there is lack, our mutual aid trains provide such services as well. It's not that we own these resources. It's not that we're choosing where they go. It's that we see where the need is and we see where they already are and we move them. In this way, we're doing like mycelial mimicry, which resensitizes us because it is no accident that we are experiencing climate collapse while we are in late stage capitalism, while we are experiencing imperialism in such a heightened state. And so mutual aid is a daily practice of connection. Um, because like mycelium, we can't, like mycelium, we are more when we reach towards each other. And that's what these mutual aid projects mean to me and what I've seen be possible. Um, and with that, I thank Earth, I thank the mycelium, I thank the North for guiding us.
Thank you, Lex. That's wonderful to hear about what you're doing and just sort of the very real life aspect of the ways that we can offer help and mutual aid to people. It's one of the things I like about permaculture is it involves food. And when we started Earth Activist training more than 20 years ago, um, and we decided to call it Earth Activist Training, we realized the acronym spells EAT. And that seemed appropriate since growing food is one of the things that we do. And eating is one of my favorite activities. I'm always grateful uh, when I have access to good and healthy food. And it is my hope that the work that we do can make that access available to everybody, because that is a right to have access to those basic things that meet our human needs. We've called in air and fire and water and earth and honored them, and they are some of the basic things that meet our human needs. We have to breathe. We need energy to grow our food and to live. We have to drink water. We have to eat food. We have to live here on this earth. But there is another element that's less tangible but equally important, and that is the element of spirit. Spirit can mean so many things. Um, to me, in part, it means community, the connectedness that we feel when we reach out to others, the ways that we can extend ourselves and help other people, the ways that we connect both to the ancestors and to those who will come after us. I wonder, Charles, if you have any feelings about spirit and community and what that means to you.
Oh, I do. As I hope many people do,
I
spirit,
thought you would.
spirit and ancestry. Um, yeah, I hold that deep connection that transfers through time and space. Um, that really connects me with both my biologic ancestors that of spirit that I feel like support me, regardless of what their ideologies were. I feel like they're a huge support, and also the cultural and spirits of movements in the past that really support. I want to draw on those and invite those to enforce all of the activists that I may not know all their names, but that have struggled through history and feel like they're part of that too. I invite the ancestry of both lineage and of spirit that support in these times of change, because there's lots of struggles and there's been lots of successful ones, and to pull strength from that.
Welcome, Spirit. Thank you, Spirit.
Welcome, spirit.
And tonight, being the solstice, I'd like to invite in that beautiful sunshine. And this is going to sound like a great cacophony if we do it on Zoom, but it could be fun. But I invite you all to unmute, to think about that radiant sun and that energy that showers us every day. And what a gift that is, just freely given out of the great generosity of Goddess, of God, of however you want to call that great spirit of collective creativity and regeneration. So I'd like to sing, and I think this is a song you all know. And you can all sing it together. Again, it'll sound like a cacophony, but it'll be, I think, a beautiful one. You are my sunshine, my
Only
only
sunshine, you
me
make me
happy
happy
when
when
skies
skies
are
are
gray.
gray.
You'll
You'll never
never
know,
know,
dear,
dear,
how
how
much
much I
I love you.
Don't
take my
take my
sunshine.
sunshine away.
Away.
Welcome,
Dear
welcome.
side of me, I guess I held you in my arms. When I awoke, dear, I was mistaken. And I held my head and I cried.
Sunshine,
My
my
only sun,
sunshine. You
you
make
make
me
me
happy
When
when
skies are gray, you'll
You'll
never
never
know,
know,
dear,
dear,
how
how much
much I
I
love
love
you.
you. Please
Please don't
don't
take
take
my
my
sunshine
sunshine
away.
away.
blessed be. That was a miracle.
Blessed be.
Almost sang in unison there for a moment. So,
And harmony.
and harmony, yeah. So, Charles, I think it's over to you.
Okay. I want to talk about some of the issues that come up when we talk about climate change, because we're going to talk about hope. We're going to talk about preparing for what's to come, but also having a vision of a hopeful future. Because I truly believe that we can have a good future, but it does require us having a vision. Like, oh, what's it going to look like, or what it might look like, so we can work towards it, versus having a vision of like dystopia disaster and like that's what we're working for. So I like having a vision of what we want, so we have something to work for. Maybe we get there, maybe we end up somewhere else, but I think having that vision is important. It's kind of like when I used to do skiing. Don't look at the trees, look at the spaces between them. You look at the trees, run into them, right? It's like, what's our vision? What are the spaces we're looking for? So I want to talk a bit about disaster.
Hooray!
Hooray, disaster. Right. I'm not saying hooray, disaster, but that we're in that season, fires, they're happening, right? We've got floods, we have these storms coming. I'm here in Mi'kma'ki, Nova Scotia, and there's predictions because of the warming of the North Atlantic. We're going to get bigger and more storms this year. So I want to talk about this idea of disaster and disturbance. So I have a little PowerPoint here, if I can pull it up. Scoot all my things around so I can get to the buttons. Let's see what I'm doing here. So I want to talk about kind of looking beyond disaster. So disturbance or crisis. When you look at this picture in the background here, is this a crisis? Where I live here in Mi'kma'ki, Nova Scotia, we have scenes like this. They're months on end where everything stops growing. It gets very cold and things fall from the sky that blankets the earth for months at a time. We call it winter. I used to live in Northern California, where Star lives. And if we had the same situation where nothing grew for months, cold fell from the sky, blanketed the earth, that would be a disaster. Absolutely unquestionable disaster. But here, where I live now, it's not a disaster. Maybe even barely called a disturbance, I just want to point out that this idea of disaster, this idea of disturbance, depends on a number of factors. So we're entering into this time of increased disasters. And what if we step back and say, what's the nature of the disturbance? And why? Why are they disasters? And what can we do about it? And I ask this question because we have things like wildfires. And you may live in an area where there's wildfires. I have friends who live there. They're fire raging now in lots of places. And, in the natural world, they're not disasters. They're disturbances for sure, but they evolved together. Prairies evolved with fire. It was important. Without fire, they degraded. They actually became unhealthy. They're a part of the system there that things evolved with, that plants evolved with, that animals evolved with, that helped rejuvenate the landscape. It actually made things healthier. It cleared out dead grass. It removed competing trees. It revitalized the soil, in the prairie ecosystems. In the lodgepole pine ecosystem, needed it for regeneration. Like the seeds would not sprout without it. It was an integral part of the ecosystem to have regular fire. Now, where fire has been removed for so many years, it can be catastrophic because it comes back after not being around, and the system's not used to it anymore, has building up of fuel loads, and the fires are more intense than historically have been, and that can be really destructive. But there is a system that existed in good relationship with fire, and it became out of relation. And our human systems often aren't designed to be in relationship with them. And my question is, how can we shift our systems? Like we envision the future so that fire that exists as a disturbance isn't a disaster. How does it move us forward to make our communities more healthy? Floods, similarly, we're getting more floods, or areas that haven't flooded in the past are starting to, and the floods are getting larger. We're starting to see storms getting larger, so more water is falling in rainfalls. But ecologically speaking, floods were hugely important. It's what brought nutrients back to the land. The floodplain was so important for ecology, and it's been a big loss as we've created dikes and channelized rivers and tried to get the water to go away quickly, lost wetlands. Like these were areas that were biologically hugely diverse, where you had quite a few species that evolved. The system evolved to be in relation water, to flooding. And what would it be like for us to design our systems, our human systems, the ones that are at threat? Like, oh, there's a flood, we lose access to food, we lose access to potable water, we lose access to communication with loved ones, we lose access to electricity and power. Like, what if we designed our systems that understood that flooding happened, so that we were not in disaster, but we were in disturbance? And what would it be like if in the, similar to the ecologic systems, so in floodplain areas, a lot of life is dependent on those, like where flooding happens, where it's part of the regular disturbance cycle. This is where a lot of insects would live. And the insects would hatch out and they'd be food for fish and for amphibians and reptiles and birds. And it drove part of the diversity of the entire system. It fed the system. And that it was very important to have this habitat that would come seasonally. You know, what part of our design could involve this? Could involve like acknowledging the regenerative nature of floods or fires. And not to say that they're not hard on, you know, the moment, you know, the individuals at times, but they're part of a system design. And humans are system designers. Like we've designed some complex things. You know, look at a city, like that's a complex design with some real clear goals in mind, but one of them wasn't being in relationship with nature. I'm suggesting that we are smart enough monkeys to be able to figure out how to design something around this. And we know some of the answers. Tornadoes, storms, right? I grew up in the Midwest where I grew up in Illinois, flat. You know, I remember sandbagging for floods from the Mississippi River. I remember tornadoes coming through. You know, it was a yearly part of life. We'd have, you know, tornadoes coming through. You know, rarely did they come through where I exactly was in the moment, but they displaced people, and that displacement I would feel. But ecologically speaking, storms are an important part of regeneration. They opened up places to allow for new growth, weeded out the forest. So trees that were unhealthy or diseased would knock them over. They would decompose. It would give life to other parts of the forest. It would open things up so that there was food that would feed wildlife. If you all you have is big, tall trees, there's a whole lot of things that don't get to be fed. But having these patches where, you know, strips of trees would be knocked down, then you have food for the deer, the quail. You know, it brought life into the forest, and it was an important part of a forest ecosystem. Without it, you know, that top, you know, forest evolution, you know, like the idea that the succession ends at like this pinnacle place, doesn't really work when you have lots of things that depend on edges and small trees and small plants and regrowth. It was an important part of life in the forest. So how can we start to think about this? How can we be more like nature? And we've designed a system that's fragile, and there's no question about it. When there is a flood, when there is a fire, when there is you know, storms, these disturbances are disasters, are crises. You know, people who lose access to food, people who lose access to power, which, you know, allows us to have light and communication with people, and our whole medical system, you know, needs energy, needs electricity. If our system is centralized, our power comes from one place, it can easily be knocked out. Our roads can easily be washed out because of where they're placed, and we lose access. That is a disaster. And it often falls on people that have less access to resources. Often marginalized communities get hit the hardest, or they have the hardest time returning back to their homes after displacement happens. So maybe a whole community gets hit hard. The people who have more means are able to return, and the people who have less means have a harder time returning. So what can we do to design this system that supports people returning to their homes, that supports our structures, so they're not so fragile to disturbance? You know, and some of what I suggest that we look at is, how do we start to decentralize some of our needs? If all of our healthcare is in one big building and you have to travel a long ways to get there, like, there are a lot of ways that can fail. Like, is there a way that our communities can take care of some of its own healthcare? Maybe not everything in every community, but there's a lot that we can do. Like, how can we get more food into our community so that we're requiring on these complex supply chains that bring food from far away? Yes, maybe there's certain things like I love, a good piece of citrus, and a lot can be produced locally where I live that isn't reliant on these large supply chains. Can we have our water system? Can we collect some of our water? Maybe not all the water we need for everything, but enough. And can we clean our own water in our local area versus having to have it pumped from far, far away? What's our water system? What's our power system? How can we decentralize some of our power system? They're moving more and more to these like large centralized systems, these centralized grids, centralized power generation. How can we start to shift some of that? And as disturbance happens, like when it happens in a forest, when it happens on a floodplain, when it happens due to fire, rebuilding is going to happen. Like there's going to be a moment when things get knocked over, displaced, flooded out, and rebuilding happens. And in that rebuilding moment, we have an opportunity to make something new. And the question is, what do we make that's new? Do we put the road back in the same place that flooded out? Or do we think about moving it? Do we rebuild our power grid the same way we had it before the time that it failed? Like, what are we doing differently? Like, can we use some of that inertia that we have? Can we plan for it now in our communities? So, like, if this goes, like, it's really hard to remove infrastructure. Like, it's politically hard to do, it's economically hard to do. But once it gets removed, it's politically and economically easier to rebuild it. The question is what rebuilds? And what can we do for that? So I'm hopeful because I see this as being a place where we can envision a future where disturbance might be the part of the generating inertia that we can start building some new systems instead of building the same old ones we had before, whether those are physical infrastructure systems or whether they're kind of political infrastructure systems. Maybe we can support our communities better by rebuilding them in a way that's more healthy than what we had before. So as disturbance can heal and rejuvenate the wild spaces, I think it can have some really positive effects on our human spaces, but it requires us organized and working together with a vision.
Thank you, Charles.
So stop there.
So let's take a breath and we're going to see what kind of a vision we can create. So I invite you to just get comfortable, close your eyes, take some deep breaths in and out, listen to the drum. We called this ritual Rooted Hope. And as I was thinking about that, I was thinking that hope is kind of like a flower. And summer solstice is kind of a time of flowering, where lots of things are just putting out those beautiful bright petals, calling on those insects, come pollinate me. But for a flower to grow and thrive, it does need roots. Whether it's like a little daisy grown in the lawn or whether it's an apple blossom on a great tree. So I'd like to take a breath and think about if we want to nourish and nurture some flowers of hope, what might they be rooted in? And in this time of so much disturbance and challenge, where do we find some roots of strength? And if you take a breath, feel that breath go in and out of your body. And think about how each one of us is rooted in our ancestors, whether we know who they were or not, whether we admire them or whether we feel uncomfortable about some of them and what they did. If you take a breath and we go back far enough, if we could trace those lines of ancestry far enough back, we all have ancestors that were indigenous to somewhere. And that lived in harmony with the earth for tens and thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. You know, some of our earliest hominid ancestors, before they were even what we call human, they lived on Earth for a couple million years. Somehow they survived, they thrived, and somewhere deep within us, embedded in our DNA, in our deep unconscious memory, is some of that knowledge. As we became what we call humans today, we lived through periods of immense disturbance where the great ice sheets came down and the warmth retreated, where the seas rose and fell, where the animals we hunted migrated, some disappeared. And as we learned to do things like grow crops, build cities, write, weave, we all have ancestors somewhere who learned those crafts, who knew those tools. Just take a breath and know that if there's some place in your life right now where you're struggling to find hope, or where maybe you have a hope for something but you don't see any way that it's going to come about, take a breath and let yourself call on the ancestors. And imagine, if you feel again that cycle of energy coming up and through you from the earth and down and through you from the sky. If you feel yourself as a vessel where earth and sky meet, let yourself also be a vessel where the past and the future come together. And know that you can call on your ancestors for guidance, for help. Whether they are your ancestors of blood or the ancestors of spirit, or the ancestors of culture. And know that in every ancestral line, no matter who you are, no matter where your people came from, there are ancestors who pushed forward the struggle for greater freedom, greater connection, greater compassion. Take a breath and let's call them in, those weavers and spinners. And breathe some of that power, that ancient wisdom, that knowledge into you and feel it strengthen those roots. And feel those roots push down deeper and push out further. Take a breath in as you follow those roots. There's another place we can root that flower of hope, and that's in our own unique gifts. Each one of us comes into this world with something that is ours alone to give to this world. And whatever it is, know that it is yours to give. You don't have to compare it to anyone else. You don't have to rate it or rank it. You don't have to apologize for it or ask permission for it. All you have to do is acknowledge it and let it grow and give it as best that you can, whatever it is. And even if you think maybe you don't have anything worthwhile to give, I would ask you to think again. Because every single one of us comes into this world with a purpose. And you don't have to be Taylor Swift. You might sing a song that makes one person happy or eases their pain. You don't have to be the greatest artist on the planet. You might just be able to help a child make a drawing. You don't have to overthrow all the systems of oppression by yourself. You just might have to make one small stand. Tell one uncomfortable truth. Advocate for one important policy. But take a breath and let yourself acknowledge all the ways already in your life you have given your gifts, nourished, helped things to grow, advocated for change, spoken truth to power. And take a breath and feel how that feeds that flower of hope and vision to open. How its colors grow a little brighter. Its scent is a little bit sweeter because you are here. And finally, there's one other important way I think we root that flower of hope. And that is when we bring those gifts together, when we come together in community, in movements, in actions. Because whether your gift feels big or small, when you bring it together with another gift and another, it grows and grows. And that little flower of hope becomes a garden. So take a breath and let yourself think about the ways in which you have worked to build and create community, to extend yourself to others, to offer mutual aid, to weave together the fabric of a power that is stronger than force. And see those flowers grow and grow. Take a moment, hear the bees buzzing in that garden. And know that just as on the longest day, the sun reaches its peak and begins to descend, and that from this day on, the days will start to be shorter and shorter. Every flower itself must finally fade in order for the seed to set. So take a breath now. If you brought a seed or you brought something to charge, just take a moment and think about that beautiful flower of all your hopes for yourself, for your own life, and for this world that we live in. Can we dare to envision what this world would be like if we all were devoted to the care of the earth, and to the care for other people, and the care for the future? Those are the three core ethics of permaculture, and three core ethics that are good to live a life by. As you take a breath and you feel that flower of hope begin to fade and set seed, what kind of seed might you plant out of that hope? How might you bring together what you take from the ancestors, what you bring from your own unique gifts, what you can combine with that of your community? What could you weave? What could you plant that might grow into that future where we can learn to live in harmony with nature's disturbance, where we can learn to live in mutual aid and harmony with one another? And take a breath and just breathe that vision into your seed, and know what it is that you can do, what step you can take in this coming season to help that seed take root and grow. Weave and spin, weave and spin. This is how our work begins. Mend and heal, mend and heal. Take the dream and make it real. Weave and spin, weave and spin. This is how our work begins. Mend and heal, mend and heal. Take the dream and make it real. Weave and spin, weave and spin. This is how our work begins. Mend and heal, mend and heal. Take the dream and make it real. Take a breath and just blow that in to your seed, to your sacred object. You can let it go with a sound. Pour some of that energy, that hope, that vision, and all the strength and nourishment we get from those roots. As the drum fades away, let yourself hold that object. Feel the strength that you get from those roots. And know that we can take those dreams and those visions and make them real. And blessed be. And so let's take a moment now and bring ourselves back into our physical bodies. And pat the edges of your body. You can notice how you're sitting and feeling, how you're dancing with gravity, how the air feels on your skin. And take a deep sniff in. Notice what you smell, what you taste. You can open your ears and notice what you hear. You can open your eyes and notice what you see. You can say your own name out loud. Starhawk. Clap your hands 3 times. And that's the end of the story. Or maybe it's the beginning of the story. But it is my hope that we will all take our gifts and bring them together, draw on that wisdom of the ancestors, and continue to hold that vision and do the work we need to do throughout this coming time. And put that vision out to people. And let people know that, the times are challenging, but they're not a moment to despair. That the earth has infinite resilience. And as humans, we have resilience. And we can handle some disturbance. We can even survive some disasters. And out of that, maybe we can build a world where we more equally share the burdens of those challenges and more equally share the fruits of the great and generous abundance of nature and the earth. Blessed be. So we've almost come to the end of our time together. I want to thank all of you for being part of this. It's your generosity that really helps us create more resilience and more diversity by sharing some of the tools and some of the things that we teach with the people who are really on those front edges of struggle. You've heard from some of them tonight. We have students that we've mentored from the Standing Rock Reserve to a community in Alaska that works with 5 different Native communities on food security, to 2 different projects in Uganda, to again the whole group of Afghan permaculturalists that we've been able to help relocate after the Taliban took over and their lives were threatened, and to find new homes and new lives. There's so many other people, so many people doing great work from teaching kids in the inner city about food and gardens, to regenerating land and learning how once again to live in harmony with some of those challenges of fire and flood, disasters, disturbances. So we invite you to go to earthactivisttraining.org and go to our donate page and give us some more money if you can, because we definitely can use it. We put it to very good use, and it goes to help support our programs and make them available, and generate more diversity in the movement as a whole. We also have some wonderful courses coming up over the next year. I have a in-person course up at one of our sister communities called OUR Eco Village in British Columbia on Vancouver Island. That's starting at the end of the month on June 30th. It's a 2-week permaculture design course and an amazing eco village. And there's going to be a conference on social permaculture called Kindling Wisdom. That's going to be this last weekend in June up in our eco village. So if you go to ourecovillage.org or Earth Activist Training website, you can find some information on that. Later in the summer, I'm going to be co-teaching with Alfred Decker in France, a permaculture course. Both of these courses are family friendly, so they're going to allow kids to come and have a kids program running concurrently. And Alfred and I are teaching at a wonderful eco village called Grand Essence. That's a bilingual French-English eco village. The course will be bilingual and translated into English and French. And if you're looking for a wonderful opportunity to take a vacation and meet incredible people and learn something, it's a great opportunity. Again, you can find all the information on our website. We have a lot of amazing online courses also coming up both over the summer and into the fall. And we have an advanced permaculture training program called Regenerative Land Management that many of our students are in who spoke tonight. That's a multi-year program that leads to a diploma in permaculture design. So we invite you to go to our website and take a look at that. Anything I forgot?
I've been posting all these things in the chat. So the PDC in France and the one in BC at the Eco Village. The links are in the chat. Also, a number of our upcoming courses this fall and early next winter. So check out the classes we have. Come join us for something. I know many of you have been on many of our courses. Come join us for some more. We love having you around. Very inspiring to get to meet you all and share time together. So come join us.
Also,
go ahead.
I'll also share a personal project of mine. I'm working on a new book on building regenerative movements. It's called The Movement We Need, but I'm doing it in a totally different way. I'm putting it out chapter by chapter on Substack as I write each chapter. And I'll be also putting out a series of podcasts to go along with that. So I invite you all to check that out. Go to Substack, Starhawk, and you can find it there.
We'll put it on the Earth Active Training webpage too. I'll get that from you posted. There was a question about the reading group. So there's a reading group, Fifth Sacred Thing reading group. If you want to take part, you can sign up on the webpage. Just go to earthactivisttraining.org, scroll down a little bit. Let's say, do you want to join the group? We don't know how many people are interested. Who's all going to come? So for people who want to, it'll just be groups that'll be made up of whoever decides they want to get together and lightly facilitated to talk about the Fifth Sacred Thing. And it'll be Starhawk's not going to be facilitating it. So it's just going to be facilitated by the people who want to read together and be inspired throughout the summer to read a great book and talk about
I've already read it, but yeah,
it.
but yeah. Um, so we should say thank you also to our wonderful interpreters. Yeah. And to our whole Earth Activist training team. We couldn't do this without you, Mariah, Elizabeth, Allie, and Charles, and our wonderful advisory council. I see some of you have been here tonight who help us figure out our direction for the future. And thank you to the elements. Thank you to the sun for your incredible, generous showering of energy on the earth. And thank you to spirit, to earth and water, to fire and air for all that you give us to sustain our lives and all that you teach us. And thank you to all of you.
And thank you to Starhawk for always being an inspiration and sharing her birthday.
Yeah,
Not exactly today, but very.
not exactly, but that's so we like to say, merry meet and merry part and merry meet again. Our circle is open but unbroken.